Hello and welcome to this update video. We're focusing on the nearly 1,000 plants that we got into the ground in one big work weekend, and also prepared the greenhouse for hosting the tomatoes again and getting rid of the young plants which were in before. And we had our annually returning Young Plants Day at the Cha0s farm. In one of the last episodes, you have seen us preparing the pumpkin bed, which we are now trying the first time this year. We took some halfway rotten sheep dung and tilled it into the ground. So we mixed it up with the hard soil that we have and then put more of the sheep dung on top. Then we laid out these foils, and now we hope the bed is prepared well enough for the pumpkins that we want to put in there. We use the foils in a different way as we usually use them. Here we lay out the ways with the foil and have an overlapping part where we plant the plants. And this way we hope that the weeds won't grow so well, and we save ourselves a lot of time and still have enough space in between those foils for the plants to grow and thrive. Last year in this area we tried to plant some potatoes, but unfortunately the soil was too dry and we weren't able to work into the soil deep enough for the potatoes. So hopefully with the improvements of the soil this year, the pumpkins will work. While this work was done in the pumpkin field, we in parallel started to prepare the beds in parcel A. Here we use our common process, which consists out of loosening the ground after we had a mulch foil for a couple of weeks on it. After loosening it, we use a rake and flatten it again, and then plant those plants between 10 and 15 centimeters into the ground. In parcel A, this year we will have our courgettes and the cucumbers. Underneath the cucumbers, we also have planted salad. As we will raise the cucumbers on those growing ladders again later on, we hope they produce shade for the salad. Here you can see one of those foils that we put on top of the beds at least 2 weeks before we start planting. The idea here is that the black foils hide out the sun and the weeds that grow die off due to the lack of sunlight before we plant new plants in them. This year we also optimized a little bit our plant delivery service, which consisted out of cutter or ninny driving up and down from the greenhouse to the field, and the responsible person for the bed ordered the kind of plants and the number of plants he needed. That worked pretty well. This is also the first season where we had more than enough plants. This is especially important as some of the plants die off on the field and we can replace them with other plants that would still raise up at the greenhouse. Another thing that we try or change this year was first putting all the plants on the particular bed to see how the distance between them would work out. Sometimes we had to change the distances, as it made more sense when we saw the plants in the field or in the bed, how they were spaced. This stands in comparison to last year, where we decided how many plants we want to have in each bed and then cramped them into the bed, which sometimes was a little bit too narrow or too widely spread. And yes, then everything repeated like the way we did it before and you have seen many times. We loosened the ground with a fork so that oxygen can go into it, put a rake to work and make everything nice and level again, spaced out the plants so that each of them has their own good living and growing space, and put them into the ground. When we put them into the ground, we try to get at least to the clay. This is the layer in the ground which usually is very wet or more moist than the compost above. So this gives always, even in hot days, the plant more than enough water so it can survive. The finer and smaller roots grow also upwards or from the stem from the plant sideways, which is then based in the compost and can get their nutrients from it. Our planting weekend is a little bit of an event in itself. We always have experienced friends and family who help us out. This time we had 3 people who did an amazing job of planting more than 1,200 to 1,300 plants in not more than 1.5 days, and we had a blast doing so. It's always nice to have volunteers who have already helped us out on the farm or with that particular job. The benefit of it is that A, they know what they're doing, and B, they already know where everything is, so the process is rather smooth and fast. Although what you're seeing currently is in time-lapse, we have been incredibly fast on that day, and everything you've seen so far happened on that one Saturday. Here you're seeing the two parts of partial D. One of them is where I'm standing, the other one is in front of you directly. On this Saturday we planted 9 out of 10 beds with tomatoes, peppers, chilies, different kind of tomatoes, and quite a lot of eggplants. Let's see which of those survive. And here you see partial A, where we planted the cucumbers, the courgettes and the salad. And behind it, where you have the foils on the ground, there are the pumpkins this year. This planting weekend happened to be the last weekend where we published our video. So now the plants are already a little bit bigger and some of them don't exist anymore due to snails and other critters. So they had to be replaced. But overall, we're very pleased with the layout and the amount of plants that have survived this year. Although it may be a little bit hard to spot, this is a picture of the early morning before we started planting. On the left hand side and right hand side in A and D, you can see still the foils on the ground. And here's a picture from next day's morning where we already have planted those young plants into the ground. It's very pleasing for us to watch it. Just 10 weeks ago, or 2.5 months, we took the greenhouse out of its winter sleep and took away the dead peppers that we had inside and some of the herbs that we stored there over winter, and put up the construction where we had all the young plants placed so that they can roughen up for the outside weather. And now, 10 weeks later, we're already putting down that whole modular construction and make everything ready and improve the ground for the tomatoes, which now we'll call this the home for the next couple of months. It's a very amazing way to see how time flies by when you're consistently working on those plants. Although we didn't really water the greenhouse actively or the ground, the water that dripped off the table from the young plants was enough to let some weeds grow in here. We took care of them, as this is way easier to do now than later when the plants are in place. And we used a very thin layer of compost compared to the last years, where we usually put up 10 centimeters. We want to try if it's enough for the plants this year. And if not, we can always adjust it and put some more fertilizer into the ground later on. We also did another change to the greenhouse. Usually we have 3 rows in the middle, but this year we said we're going to do 2. As in last years, we could see that the middle part was not growing so well and so good as the sides. We thought it may be a problem that they take away the nutrients and the sunlight from each other. As we don't know for sure, we're going to test this theory and keep you posted. Something which is a returning thing every year is our young plant market, which we are hosting for the 3rd time on the farm. We always have helpers that help us with the whole setup and organizing the plants, putting them in the right space, keeping the people where the plants are that they are able to buy and not go wander off somewhere, which is very neat and nice to have so many helping hands for this as well. At this point, that's basically it for this video. We have done a lot of other things, preparing the next big secret project and improved our new greenhouse a little bit. But as we have been quite tired from the last weeks, taking care about the young plants and doing all that stuff, we didn't feel like picking up the camera too many times. So with that, have a nice one and see you soon.